Welcome to Inclusion Revolution here on Eastlink TV. I'm your host, Tova Sherman, welcoming you to another week of interesting discussion related to the inclusion of persons with disabilities in our community. Tonight's we're having a very special guest join us, Emma Halpern from the Nova Scotia Barrister Society. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Tova.
Now, Emma is the Equity Officer at the Barrister Society. And before we get too far into what you do, how about we start with telling everybody what is the Nova Scotia Barrister Society? And obviously, barristers giving a little hint, but we'd like to hear more.
Sure. The Barrister Society's primary mandate is to regulate lawyers. And so that's sort of what people hear about when they hear the Nova Scotia Barrister Society. They think of the regulation of lawyers. But the actual wording of the mandate is promotion and protection of the public interest in the practice of law. So there is a public interest perspective. So what I do sort of falls under the sort of larger umbrella of regulation of lawyers, but it takes a sort of different angle. It's a more of a prevention side of things, looking at what is the public interest piece, in particular, obviously addressing equity issues.
Right, and hence the term equity officer. Mm-hmm. But what I'm really interested in, and one of the reasons I wanted you to come on today, Emma, is, again, that public perception around what is the legal community. And we hear so much about, whether it's lawyer jokes or whether it's the concept that the lawyer is speaking a different language and all of these things. And I thought it was really exciting to hear what you were doing and some of the directions the Barrister Society was taking beyond, as you said, being that regulatory board, but actually taking an interest in providing lawyers the opportunity to grow and be, frankly, more inclusive in not only with their clients, but perhaps even in their hiring. So that's one of the reasons I thought it was very important the community knows about you, because, again, we do hear a lot of the negative, and I think some of the work you're doing is incredibly positive. Can you tell me a little bit about, and again, we're going to talk in the disability context, because I do know that you are inclusive and focused on all types of minority groups and diverse groups, but because, of course, you're on my show, you get to talk about disability today. And for me, I really wanted to hear about some of the things that you're driving, because you are really the driving force, and frankly, as the only equity officer there, obviously you have a lot on your plate. So my question is, what's happening right now, or what's going on, or what are some of the directives the Barrister Society is taking to be more inclusive and to engage the legal community around the issues around disability and inclusion?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the first piece.
Okay, because I don't even know what I asked anymore. You figure it out.
Which is sort of a general description of sort of the equity office, and then into sort of the more specific around the disability issues. So kind of going off of what you said, my mandate is to work with on issues of discrimination and diversity in the legal profession as a whole. So that would include issues of access to justice, making sure that we have a representative legal population, so lawyers who represent our public. And so, of course, that would include people living with disability. And it also, so I look, internally in the legal profession, what are lawyers doing to support clients who are coming from diverse populations, or who are we hiring to become lawyers, who are we educating, who are we encouraging to come into the legal profession to make sure that we have not only the legal lawyers with not only the legal knowledge, but also the experiential knowledge of living in, whether it's living with a disability or being from a racialized or Aboriginal community, so that we can bring that into the legal profession as well. So what that translates into in terms of my work is a number of different types of activities. So everything from, unveiling the portrait of the first African Nova Scotian lawyer. We do that type of thing to make sure that there is an awareness that we do have many prominent African Nova Scotian lawyers, and have had prominent African Nova Scotians for since as long as the early 19th century. So that type of thing. We also do policy work, and I'll talk a little bit about our disability work around disability policies, and sort of ensuring that law firms and legal workplaces in general have policies of inclusion that encourage inclusion.
Right.
We also do all kinds of events and committees, and work, with different. My job is to work with different community groups, hear from the public, hear from the community groups, work with places like Reachability to sort of see what are the issues that people living with disability in Nova Scotia face when encountering the legal system. Where are the sort of pressure points there? So, and then going on to the second part of your question, which was, what are we doing at the Barrister Society? Well, there's a number of things. One, I think one thing that I'm very excited about is a newly formed committee that has members of the legal community, myself as the equity office, and so coming from the Barrister Society, and then members of Reachability, sort of representing the public, coming together, meeting regularly to talk about issues facing people living with disability and when they try and encounter the legal system, and looking at how we can create a more inclusive legal system, legal community.
Right. So what I'm hearing, just so I can, because back and forth we go, but what I'm hearing is that first and foremost, the role is really to make sure that the community is represented, the entire community and all of its diversity is represented through the Barrister Society, through the legal community themselves, as well as, of course, access to all of those communities to legal services. Those are some of the goals I'm hearing.
Yeah, and that would be at every level, and I want to stress that. So we're talking, we need to have representation of diverse communities, both within the legal profession, within the court systems, within our judiciary, at every single level. That's very much a part of my job, is looking at that. And then also, we need to be looking at what, as clients of the legal system, our public, I always say lawyers are service providers. That's what we do. We provide a service, and we need to think of ourselves that way, as service providers. And so in order to be able to provide the service, we need to understand what are the issues. We can't just guess what are the issues for people living with disability. We need to be out there talking to community and understanding what those issues are, and hearing and listening and actually trying to make change based on that.
One of the things that impressed me initially was the fact that I know that the barristers made a decision to do some needs assessments throughout the community and really engage many different diverse members of the community and hear some of the things that they want, some of the issues they're facing around access to justice and the perception even around the legal community. And that was really, for me, where I started to notice that the Barrister Society, and I'm sure it's been going on forever, but the Barrister Society is really starting to look at my community and say, not just around the client piece, but are we employing persons with disabilities? And are lawyers with disabilities being engaged appropriately and being provided accommodation? And are they even comfortable disclosing? And all of those issues that build from stigma, no matter who you are or what's going on. So for me, that was a really interesting start point. Can you perhaps just touch very briefly on some of the things that came out of that sort of initial assessment? And although I know that, again, it's broad in terms of the diverse community, but if we could focus on some of those as they relate to the disability community.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was, what you're talking about is a public perception survey that we embarked upon
That sounds much better than what I said.
No. And so in order to do that, we did a number of things. We engaged Bristol to do a phone survey, and we did a random phone survey of the Nova Scotian population to try and gauge what the perception was of lawyers, what the perception was of the Barrister Society, if people really understood what we did, and whether we were viewed positively, or whether individual lawyers had a sort of a positive perception as strong and important members of our community. Some of the interesting findings of that were, hey, I know that lawyers don't come across often. They don't get the gold stars as being some of the most well-liked professions out there.
Well, that's why you're here. We're going to change that with us.
Yeah, but I thought one of the things that I thought was quite interesting is that when they looked at who, people's perceptions of lawyers, it was actually people coming from the disabilities communities or from diverse communities, racialized communities, and so on, that had a more positive view of lawyers than the sort of general population, because we surveyed based on, we asked some self-identifying questions of those we surveyed, and then we also did those focus groups, which you were involved in one of the focus groups, to try and sort of understand those coming from disadvantaged communities, how do they view lawyers differently than others. And to my surprise, they actually, what we found was that those people coming from those communities often felt that they viewed lawyers more positively. And perhaps that was because of there are, in my view, a very strong group of lawyers who are out there every day volunteering their time, trying, whether it's on boards, whether it's through programs like the Reachability program, trying to provide service where they can, and engaging with community, in particular engaging with communities that have been historically disadvantaged.
Okay, well, what I want to do is when we come back with Inclusion Revolution and Emma Halpern, we're going to talk about some of the results of those assessments and some of the actions that the Barrister Society is taking. So don't go away. We'll be right back.